It's almost impossible to pick the king of sports anime when there's so much to love about each one. From the raw action of Kuroko no Basket to the pure hype of Blue Lock and the near perfect characterization of Haikyuu. It's a genre of anime that doesn't need otherworldly powers or terrifying monsters to keep you on the edge of your seat. But there's one anime that dominated the early 2010s. An anime with the wackiest story you can think of. An anime that completely crushes it in video game sales. I'm talking about Inazuma 11. Yes, this is a football anime, and no, I will not at any point use the S word, which is tough because it's everywhere in the show. It's about a football-obsessed boy who is the son of a legendary goalkeeper and is trying to take one of the worst teams in the country to the very top of the football frontier. There's a lot that happens, including a literal alien invasion, but this video will focus on the first part of Season 1, covering two really questionable games. But hey, you'll get to see a lot of cool special moves. We start the show with a match between Royal Academy and a team that the show doesn't even bother to come up with a name for. And it turns out, for some reason, if you lose to Royal, your team has to be disbanded. In fact, Royal will personally do it for you by literally steamrolling it. Fun. And that brings us to Raimon High, who don't have the best of football teams, but the captain and goalkeeper, Endo, wants to challenge for this year's Football Frontier. But they can't exactly do that because they only have 7 players. And they can't even find a place to practice. So instead, Endo practices against elementary school kids, and one of them almost ends up hitting these two distinguished gentlemen. But it's all good because they're really chill about it and... Anyway, the child abuse continues and this little rat is about to take a ball to the face, but luckily, a completely irrelevant bystander who definitely isn't important at all saves the day. Endo asks his savior if he wants to play with them, but he just gives him a side eye and leaves, probably because he's not that important to the rest of the show. Or maybe he is, because he ends up transferring to Raimon. Endo tries again to recruit him, but Goenji actually quit football at the ripe old age of 12 years old. Endo gets called to the principal's office where he thinks the club is going to get disbanded, but the principal, who always has his eyes closed for some reason, tells him that they're going to be playing a match against none other than Royal Academy, the team that won the Football Frontier 40 years in a row. Endo complains that they only have 7 members, but Natsumi, who is the school director's daughter, tells him to suck it up and find some more. Now these two are polar opposites and are already butting heads, so I'm sure you all already know how this is gonna end. Endo starts looking for 4 more players and his hunt leads him back to none other than Goenji, who's pretty clearly getting pissed off by Endo's sales pitches. Endo starts to train using his dead granddad's notebook that only he can read, and in most cases you'd say this is some pretty unconventional training, but in the context of anime this is pretty standard, so I don't really even have much else to say other than Kazamaru from the field club likes Endo's passion, so he decides to join the club, bringing the total up to 8 members, and they're all here watching Endo and Kazamaru fall in love and soon join in on the training session, because if there's one thing that's true about football, it's that you can learn it in just one evening. That brings us to match day, where this guy and this guy join the team, and naturally neither of them have ever played football either. The Royal Academy players then arrive on a literal red carpet, and in typical anime fashion, they can move faster than the eye can see, because of course they can. It wouldn't be an anime without some preteens doing some superhuman things. And speaking of superhuman, Endo is going to have to do something miraculous soon because the team still only has 10 players and it's almost time for kickoff. Luckily, Aki arrives with 4 Eyes, who's more than happy to play the hero that saves the day. But why are Royal here in the first place? After all, just like Natsumi says, they're way better than Raimon, so why waste their time? It looks like quite a few people aren't sure about this, including this detective who somehow manages to get into school without anyone seeing him, which should be raising some alarms. Apparently, the commander, Kageyama, wants to see the strength of a certain player for himself. The game finally kicks off and Raimon get off to a surprisingly good start, though I'm surprised half these players can even dribble in a straight line. I mean, the first time he's kicked a ball in his life was yesterday, and this guy can somehow jump 30 feet into the air, but I won't question that since this is an anime and logic be damned. Obviously, he doesn't score because that would be boring, but that's not important. Look at this. Does this not look like it's over the line? Hell, this one definitely looks like it's in the back of the net, but apparently I must be going blind. But at least this means Raimon have a chance. Well, one goal isn't the end of the world. There's still plenty of time to... This isn't even a match anymore. This is full-on abuse. But I'll allow it because it means we get to see our first special move. And let's be honest,
That's pretty metal.
and we get to see a lot more special moves, which are mainly used to abuse Raimon and less to score goals. But if I showed you every move, this video would end up being 20 hours long. And besides, Royal make it pretty clear they don't even really need to use special moves to abuse the players. So naturally, this guy, whose name I genuinely don't remember, ends up running off the pitch, so Raimon are now down to 10 players and are losing 20-0. But Endo still refuses to give up, and that seems to be enough to sway a certain student to join the, well, I was going to call it a match, but I think we can all agree this is anything but a football match at this point.
おや彼はもしや昨年のフットボールフロンティアで1年生ながらその強烈なシュートで一躍ヒーローとなった高円寺修也
Now, there's a lot of indicators in anime that someone is about to do something really badass, but the best one is probably wearing your colors up. But then again, wearing a literal cape is also up there. Speaking of up there, Royal get ready to do another death zone, but that's okay because Goenji is there to stop it.
あ明日なぜか高円寺遠藤を全くフォローせず
It turns out Goenji doesn't need to help because he believes in Endo, which is probably not the smartest thing to do considering he's let in 20 goals. But then again, considering what comes next, I can't complain.
まさか幻のゴッドハンド
Really makes you think why he didn't try and stop the other 20 goals, but at least he stopped this one. And not only did he stop it, he throws the ball all the way up the pitch to Goenji, so we get to see yet another iconic special move. And just like that, Raimon win. Never mind, they're still losing by 19 goals.
たった今帝国学園から試合放棄の申し出がありゲームはここで終了
Huh, well, I guess that turned out pretty well. But not as well as you might think, because Goenji straight up hands in his 2-week notice and leaves. But Endo isn't one to get discouraged, so he decides it's best that they address some weaknesses in the team. And if the last game is anything to go by, this is going to be a long session, especially because Somioka is not so subtly jealous of Goenji. But their club meeting is cut short by a surprise visitor who tells the team about their next game. Apparently, because they beat Royal Academy, there's hundreds of schools lining up wanting to play them, and their next opponent is going to be Occult Junior High, which is quite the name for a school. And just like always, if they lose, their club is disbanded. But if they win, Natsumi will enter them into the football frontier, which decides the best football team in the country. But it turns out that Occult's actual request to play Raimon was pretty creepy, saying they'd curse them if they refused. The club, remember, they're an actual football club and actually have to train every once in a while, and we see Somioka really struggling to cope with the skill gap between him and Goenji. And that's about the time that Haruna joins in to tell the team how weird Occult really is. Apparently, in their last game, all of the opposition players got a fever and collapsed, and whenever they look like they're about to lose, a howling wind rushes through and the game gets called off. But the last one is what really gets me. When anyone tries to score, their legs stop working. Now, I'm no expert, but Rule 2 and Rule 3 kind of seem to contradict one another. How are they ever in losing positions if no one can score against them? Yeah, I know, I'm reading too much into a football anime aimed at children. So let's focus on their training session again. Endo continues training to try and learn a new special move, and this is where we really get to see him act like a captain. He says that the team see Goenji as a hero, and football shouldn't be played with one person, but 11. So he isn't going to ask him to join the team again. And yet he still ends up following him to the hospital of all places, but Goenji is visiting his sister who's in a coma. Now, I know I said this was a kids show, but strap in for this story. Goenji was in the Football Frontier final with his old school against Royal Academy, and his sister was really excited to watch him play. But on the way to the game, she was in a serious car accident, and Goenji ended up missing the game to rush to see her, but found her in a coma. Now, there's a lot more to this story later on, and it gets surprisingly dark. And after that, there's even more to the story, which gets really, really dark. But I'll cover those in another video, so subscribe so you don't miss it. But let's focus on Raimon's training again, where Endo promises to help Somioka learn a special move like Goenji's Fire Tornado. And surprise, surprise, after a few days of hard work, he learns Dragon Crash. And Goenji is there to see it, where he runs into Natsumi. Well, runs into is probably not quite accurate, considering she did a background check on him and studied the routes he takes to get home, which is definitely not creepy. She asks him why he ever played football in the first place, which makes him realize it's actually for his sister. And you can probably see where all of this is going, so let's just skip ahead to the day of the match, and if that's not the creepiest bunch of 12-year-olds you've ever seen, then I don't know what is. Oh, and their coach is called Heckle Jide in the dub. Occult start the game off but are surprised to see how good Endo actually is. And if anyone's ever actually played the Inazuma 11 games, you'll know how painful it is that he used this damn move so early on. I'm pretty sure it costs like 45 points, which is a lot. And speaking of special moves, so Miyoko uses his new Dragon Crush to score the first goal not once, but twice. And that's when the coach does a literal 180, and you really appreciate how appropriate the name Heckle Jide is. He starts chanting, which messes with Raimon's vision, and they end up marking each other before they're frozen in place by Occult's Ghost Lock, which gives them an easy goal. And on the other side of the pitch, the keeper has his own special move which easily stops Dragon Crash, which should again make you wonder why these damn goalkeepers don't just use their special moves from the start. The game carries on this way until Occult take the lead just before the start of the second half, where things only go from bad to worse as the teams start arguing with each other. But it looks like Endo has a plan and manages to stop their chanting somehow. I'll be honest, I have no clue what he did here, but we get to see his new special move, so once again, I won't complain. But I'm sure you're wondering what the hell's going on, so I'll do my best to explain. Occult messes with Raimon's vision with their constantly changing formation. While that was happening, their coach was sending subliminal messages to make them stop moving in what's effectively a double hypnosis. So when Endo said rumble rumble break, it snapped everyone out of the hypnosis. Now I know that makes no sense at all, but considering these kids can jump 20 feet in the air, I think we can allow it. Raimon then go on the counter-attack and Goenji figures out that their keeper is using hypnosis to knock the strikers off balance to weaken their shots. So their solution is to work together, and we get to see the second combined special move in the show. And it turns out there's quite a few people watching this game as so Miyoko and Goenji combine once more to win Raimon the game. This means they'll finally be competing in the football frontier, which I'll cover in another video, so make sure to subscribe so you can find out why their teacher is secretly talking to Kageyama. And in the meantime, if you like sports anime, check out one of my Haikyuu videos. The Bokuto one is my personal favorite. Thanks for watching.